Today we're talking about CrossFit and CrossFit Media with Sean Woodland. Let's get into it. Hey, do me a favor before we get started with Sean, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and hit the notifications bell so you don't miss any content here on the channel. I was thinking, as everything came down over the years, those of us that have been in this space for a while, I've certainly seen CrossFit make their share of what we would call questionable decisions, particularly in the most recent years around the games, that have left those of us that are fans scratching their head as to what they're thinking. And when you announced that you aren't going to be part of the broadcast team for the CrossFit Games, I think that was one of the biggest, most confusing things that has happened in a while for most of us that are fans of the sport and of yours. And what was really interesting to me as that announcement came out was just the overwhelming tidal wave of support. What was that entire experience like for you?
I was blown away by it. I'm not stupid. I knew when I put something out there that it probably would be talked about, but I didn't think it would be talked about at the level that it was. And I would get flooded with, and I'm still getting them, messages and comments and calls and texts. And what that did for me was, really make me take a long look in the mirror and say, okay, are you being the person day in and day out in every aspect of your life who's worthy of this support and worthy of this praise? And it had a profound effect on me. Like, I really came away from that saying, okay, these are the things that I want to do better to make sure that I'm worthy of that. But I cannot thank people enough, because 2 weeks before that, when I found out, I was at a pretty low point. Like, I was not in a good place, and I had to come to terms with some things. And I think I've done that. And that the support I felt from the community certainly helped pull me out of that. And it was like a total 180. So I cannot thank people enough.
Yeah, I was actually curious about your emotional state through that. You mentioned that you were in a kind of a rough place there. I was thinking about, the job that you're in is obviously contract work, and it's the nature of the beast, I think. Does it feel like it's just part of the job to you, or do you still have to emotionally work through these decisions as they happen?
It's definitely part of the job. I knew more or less like this was not a guaranteed thing. I felt confident that I was going to get asked back just because of the track record and things like that. And I think going into the season after the Open, the writing was on the wall a little bit for me. I felt like I was being phased out a little bit. I did one Open announcement. I did one semifinal, and that is the least amount that I've been asked to do since joining CrossFit in 2012. So I thought, okay, maybe I'm getting phased out a little bit, but I still thought, okay, no, the games are coming. They had me do a semifinal. That was a warm up for the games. So I'm going to be at the games. And I think the tough part for me is that, I was not ready and am not ready to step down from that job. That job has meant more to me than any other job that I have had in my entire career anywhere. And I just wasn't at a place where I was ready to let it go. And I think that was the thing that I had to come to terms with. There's still other things I will do in this space, but that one meant a ton to me. And to have it taken away and not getting an explanation as to why was hard to come to terms with. But I have, and there's still other things I get to do. There's still other events this year I'm going to do. And hopefully I will be back. But a lot of people in this business will tell you once you're out, they very rarely do you get asked back. Now, I hope that is not the case. So my fingers are crossed. I still want to be part of this.
You mentioned what you were describing as a phase out, and Don had mentioned us back in February that they were going to do, in his words, significant cuts to sport. Do you think this is part of that kind of budget realignment or budget cuts they're doing, or is it something different?
If it's budget, it's the amount of money that they're saving is very insignificant. I have trouble really buying into that. It might be just, look, we want to give some other people a chance. And it might just be that simple. I know, having in the past been in charge of, okay, we're putting this person here, this is how much everyone makes, this is the budget. Like, I've been in charge of that, and having a rudimentary grasp of what the numbers are, that's an insignificant amount of money.
Right. You mentioned the past. I was thinking about your past within CrossFit and how interesting it is to me, not only yours, but just CrossFit in general has this history of employees that have been laid off. I don't know if they make fun of that, But this is the only business I've ever seen that has laid off employees, and you were part of that original media layoff,
Mhm.
but yet you stuck with the brand. And there's so many people that have done that, that were part of that, that have, stayed within the space and stuck with the brand and continued to work with CrossFit. Why do you suppose so many people are so loyal to the sport?
I think for me, it was because of everything that it has given me, and the people that I have met and the people that I've gotten to work with year over year. To just walk away from all that in 2018 was tough. We had all worked so hard to get it to a point, and by we, everybody in the media department, to get it to a point where we were, I tell people, we were on the launching pad in 2018. There were some things that we were being told about what CBS and CBS Sports wanted for the 2019 season that were so encouraging, and we had all felt like, hey, we finally arrived. And to have that yanked out from under us was, it was pretty tough to deal with. And we all felt that there was still like there's some life in this thing. We still wanted to push it forward. I wasn't ready to give up on that. And I think a lot of people were the same way. Mars and Heber, they're like, we're not done making content in this space. And Tommy was the same way. He's like, I don't want to be finished. Like, we still have some work to do here. And there were a lot of conversations going on outside about entities that might come in and try to keep this thing going. And that was part of the motivation as well. But to me, it was that there was so much sweat equity put into this thing that I just wasn't ready to stop.
All of it's interesting to me, just in the kind of the pure concept of all of you guys who were laid off back in 2018 and then stuck with the sport. And since then, we've had this trickle down effect of layoffs, both at the HQ level and within media. And it feels like the current regime is catching all the grief for those media layoffs, even when in reality, the impetus to all of this was 2018.
Yeah, I think you did a really good job too. And I can't remember what video it was, but talking about, I think, the misunderstanding of Eric Rosa and what the sort of the power dynamic was there when he came in. And if you listen to what he said, it was a lot of people were like, oh, we're back. And he was telling us, hey, we're going to be doing a lot more of this stuff. I remember in Morgan Hill when we did the 2020 COVID games, he sat down at the table with me, Chase, and Bill, and we were talking about the games and his plans and how, yeah, you guys going to have a lot more opportunities to do this type of stuff. And that seemed to be the message that was getting out there. We were certainly amplifying that. A lot of people were amplifying that, and Eric was out there front and center. So I think there was this feeling that, oh, okay, now we're back. And if you watch the games, the first year that Eric came back, they broadcast everything.
Right.
They had adaptive, and that was the year that I think first year they had added the adaptive athletes, and they had masters. Everybody got Eric coverage, and that seemed to let people know that, okay, we're seriously invested in that thing. And then the brakes got put on that pretty fast, and then they switched directions. So it's been fits and starts since 2018.
Yeah, and it's hard to come back from that. I think everyone understood what Glassman did. They understood the financial ramifications of how much it was costing to do regionals and everything else at the time. And then, to your point, Eric came in and made a lot of promises. And when those went away, I think that break in trust between Eric to now is creating a lot of drama for current HQ. And admittedly, they've got some forced errors that they're creating on their own that's not helping their cause. But I think there are moments where it feels a little undue due to the history of what has happened over the past 5 or 6 years that make people lash out at events like this more maybe than they should. I was really grateful for the amount of support you got out of it, as opposed to people just blasting HQ. I saw that even Castro mentioned they had plans to continue to work with you. They haven't discussed that with you at all at this point?
No, not yet. They have, and I think Dave specifically said at the games, and I said, "Oh, well, that's cool. It'd be nice if someone were to let me know about that."
Maybe it's a top secret plan, so
Could be. I don't know.
so no one leaks out a games event. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
You never know. Just last couple of questions. Obviously, you've been intimately involved in the sport. You are a dedicated CrossFitter, or is dedicated. I think you're dedicated. I don't know. You're a little fitter than me.
Kind of big. No,
But you've been around as long as anyone and have seen the company change directions and everything they've done over the years. What's your overall impression of where they're headed now?
man, I wish I knew. And I think I just don't know, because I've always said this: just because I don't understand something doesn't mean it's wrong. I just need someone to explain it to me. So I don't know if we're just talking media, no sort of plan or direction or anything like that has been communicated to me, or I think really to anybody about what the goals are, what the plan is, what the mission statement it is. And just because I don't understand what they're doing, again, doesn't mean it's wrong. If they could say, hey, here's what we're doing, here are the results we've seen from it, and this is why we think it's the right way to go, then I say, okay, great. Thank you for explaining that to me. Now I understand. But it feels almost like they're just trying to hang on and go day by day until, and you've talked about this,
Right.
until they shepherd it to a sale. And okay, that's fine, but, and maybe that's what needs to be communicated. But I just think they're, just tell us what the plan is. We might not agree with it. Tell us what you're trying to accomplish. And then at least we know the target you're trying to hit. And I don't know what that is. And I think a lot of people don't know what that is. And I think that's the biggest hang up that people have in the community. They just want to know mission statement, goals, and how you're going to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I've used the term rudderless for a while and trying to determine the direction they're going. I think they're trying. I want to give them credit. There's the side of me that's hyper positive. They're making some attempts with the affiliate town halls as an example of an area where they're trying to communicate better. And props to them for doing that because that's a relatively new event at the company level. But there's only so much affiliate owners can get out to the public and to the general community. And I think they lack recognition of how events like this, and don't let this go to your head, but when you have a beloved figure like yourself, who is quite literally the voice of the sport, you can't watch a clip within CrossFit that your voice isn't on by and
Sorry
large.
about that, by the way.
Yeah. No, I think that's one of the best parts. And we all joke every time I pull up a clip and I hear you talking, it's like you're in the room with me. So when I'm texting you, I hear your voice through the text. But that's how you are in the sport to people. And when you make a decision like that, that it changes how people view and will listen and interact and be a part of the games. Cause, let's face it, most people, 98% of people won't be there live.
Mhm.
You're the part they experience. And so it's a big loss for them. And I think the lack of communication for that, or the understanding that you have to have a better communication process, is a monster miss at the community level for sure.
I just want to echo what you said too. There are a lot of good things going on over there, especially I think at the affiliate level and the stuff that they've implemented to help out affiliate owners and to help them run better businesses and be better coaches. And there are so many good people like CrossFit HQ who are trying their best. Like in this one area of media, because I think that's how a lot of people found the methodology and or the sport. And that is really the one that we enjoy or have enjoyed in the past. When you zero in on that, and to your point about getting the message out, like I think people just want to know what is that going to be?
Yeah. And I think it's okay if they came forward and said, hey, look, this is going to be a cost savings for us for the next 3 years while we focus on
Sure.
generating revenue and affiliate growth, because affiliate growth is their North Star. If they want to come forward and say that, I think that is fine. I think everyone would understand it. I think you would have understood that right from the very beginning,
Mhm.
so it'll be interesting to see what's next and what direction they take immediately following the games, which, believe it or not, at this point, is just a couple of weeks away.
I can't, wrap my head around that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's unreal. We're just two more things. This one's off track of what we've been discussing, but I wanted to bring it up just because I follow you closely and we're friends. But I've enjoyed watching your journey as a new dad for
Oh, thank you.
last couple of years. And that's always fun for me since my kids are grown up. And so I'm curious, now that you've been a dad for a few years and had these experiences, what do you know now that you didn't know before?
I think what I know now that I didn't know before is how much your behavior as a father and a parent molds your child, not only at these early years, but beyond. I have seen some things that I do, just little habits, little things that I do, little just self talk or routines that I get into, whether it's positive or negative, that my son will pick up on because I, now looking back, understand that I picked up on those as a kid and had no real idea of how much of an impact they had on me growing up. Things I do when I'm around him, try not to get easily frustrated, try not to lose my temper, try not to be quick to anger, as when you're tired and you're a dad and the kids just, you get, that happens. because that stuff does have an effect. And I never realized how big of an effect it had until I saw the roles being reversed.
You're also grooming him to be a Star Wars fanatic, and I love that.
Oh, no, well, I just, the word grooming nowadays, that's a dangerous term. I haven't, this is the other thing I realized. And it's hard because you want your kids to be into the same stuff as you. You want, I take him ice skating a lot. So far, he seems to like it. I don't want to push it on him, but I just want him to have interests. His interests will probably not be my interests, and my interests probably will not be his. But I think the most important thing is that if you just want your kids to have interests, just be into something that inspires you, that makes you want to work hard, be better, find something like that. It might not be my thing, and that's okay. And it's hard as a parent to understand that sometimes, that, hey, my son might hate science fiction and he might not be into sports, and that's okay. But I just want him to be into something.
I love that. I try to do the same thing with my kids. For the record, they did not take to Star Wars at all. They did take to the kind of the nerdy superhero stuff. And the other day on Father's Day, my oldest, who is the least sentimental of my two kids, puts in her story, "Happy Father's Day to the man who introduced me to Glee." And I'm like, I called her. She was upstairs. I called her downstairs. I'm like, "I've introduced you to Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Queen, Led Zeppelin. Some of the greatest music ever. And you have to give me credit for Glee." She's like, "Well, to be fair, Dad, Glee was a gateway drug to all those bands." I'm like, "Okay, that's probably fair."
All right.
It's just always interesting what your kids pick up from you over the years. So I love that perspective, Sean. I really do. I read once in a study that kids generate most of their values, if not all of them, by the time they're 5. And so I think that's a really amazing thing to pick up. Your son's obviously, younger than that. And so I think it's amazing to see that you've learned that early on, and you'll have this kid dressing up like Boba Fett for the rest of his life. So
possibly, I don't know. It was funny. I heard one quote that's my North Star, and of all people, I think it was Mr. Rogers who said it, and I don't know where it was. It may have been on the Oprah show, and I saw a clip on social media. But she was asking him about, what advice would you have for parents? And he said, "Remember what it was like for you." And I try to think about that all the time. Like when I was his age and I was dad, mom, like what that was like when they didn't pay attention or they got upset, and I that really hit me when I heard that, to say, okay, that's a really good sort of North Star when you're trying to deal with your kids.
Yeah, I think that's terrific perspective. Thank you for joining. I
My pleasure.
really appreciate it. And fingers crossed that Dave was right and they're going to get you back in there to do something, because I know the entire community wants it. And
I appreciate it. And I love what you're doing with the channel, man. I love the content you're putting out. Thanks for having me. Thanks again to the community for all the support, and a lot more that I'm going to be part of moving forward, and always happy to work again with CrossFit. There's some great people over there that I really enjoy working with.